What's going on, guys? I'm here again to do second topic of my Texas Hold'em series. I guess it's the third video if you include part two of the first topic, which was the top hands. This video is going to be a little basic to start out. It's going to include definitions, terms that a lot of you guys might not know, not stuff like check and raise and re-raise and bluff. Hopefully, if you're watching this, you guys know all that. Um, a little more advanced terms, nothing like super complicated, but just some terms that you might hear at the poker table or stuff that words you can know to describe your hand or your situation to other players. So I just created a list. I think I have about 30 words here. I just kind of thought of these, the most like kind of common but not too well known terms. All right, sorry about that, guys. My phone went off. That was actually my boss calling. Had to answer that. But just about 30 terms that aren't exactly like commonly known, but are used a decent amount. So, first term is backdoor. Backdoor includes usually means any after the flop. Say this is the flop, whatever the cards are. Sorry, here maybe I'll this way. I'll make it a little better. I know the angle is not great. It's 276. So backdoor would mean, well, actually, hold up. Let me change that to 273. Two diamonds. Backdoor would be if I was holding like ace of diamonds, 10 of hearts. Let's see if I'll get the ace of diamonds. Backdoor would just mean that I get running. It means running cards to make your hand. So when I'm betting on this hand, I'm probably not looking for the flush because runner flush is only about 6% after the flop. But backdoor would just mean if four of diamonds came and 10 of diamonds came, I would have a backdoor flush made. I would have an ace high, nut four flush, or nut five flush, and that's what backdoor means. Same with like a straight draw. If 6 and 8 come on the board and I have like 7 king, and then 9 10 come on the board on the turn and the river, that would be a backdoor straight. Second term, bad beat, is just a term used to describe like anytime you're heavily favored in the odds and the deck, you get kind of a cold deal or a cold deck. So if I have pocket aces and you have pocket kings, I'm a 4-1 favorite pre-flop. We get all our money in, and you flop a king. That's a bad beat. And usually the percentages I would say that's a bad beat is like it's got to be better than 80-20. So that's the least of a bad beat. So anything, it doesn't always have to be pre-flop. It could just be like I have ace king and you have ace queen, and the 4 cards are down, and I still have the best hand with like a pair of aces, and my king kicker is better. And then on the last card, when you have 3 outs, a 7% hand, you hit a queen. That's a bad beat. That's a bad beat. And so whenever the odds are heavily against you, generally under 20%, and you beat the guy with who's over a 4-1 favorite or better, that's a bad beat. Third term, easy one. If you ever hear boat or full boat, just means full house. So 3 of a kind in a pair is a full house. Hopefully you guys know that. C-bet is short for a continuation bet. A lot of people, and especially if you're watching this, you might not know what a C-bet is, but it's actually a pretty common play in poker. I'll describe it here, I guess. It's when, say there's 150 in the pot and it's me and one other person in the pot, and my action's first. Like, say I was the pre-flop raiser, say he called the blind, I min raised to, say the blind was 20, I min raised to 40, he calls that, and it's my action first, say he was the dealer. A C-bet would be if I didn't have anything. If my hand was ace king and it's a good pre-flop hand, it's okay to raise with, but the flop comes, 9 10 4, rainbow flop, all different suits. Nothing's building my hand. A C-bet would be I would throw out another like 40 chips just to see if my opponent caught the flop at all, because 2 out of 3 times he's going to miss the flop 66% of the time, and that will get him to fold most of the time. Sometimes he could miss the flop, but know that you could just be C-betting, because a lot of players do it, because most of the time that bet's going to get him to fold because he has nothing that on the board that matches his hand. If I just check, which a lot of people think is a good play, they have ace king and nothing matches the board. Oh, I obviously don't have a hand. I check. You're showing weakness to your opponent, and that's when they'll take the lead in the pot and they'll raise, and then you're sitting here trying to call about a 60 with ace high. It's just not a situation you want to be in. So, if you make that first C bet, which is a continuation bet, and you raise and they call you, or if they re-raise you, your hand's probably not good. That's when you could fold. It's about getting information early in the hand. So that's what a C bet is, a continuation bet. Drawing dead is just a term to mean you have 0% equity in the pot. Well, I guess I should describe equity. Equity just means your chance of making your hand. So like if I have 2 spades in my hand and there's 2 spades on the flop, let me get rid of these because that was only for the first example. I have 34% chance to hit a flush. I have 34% equity in the pot. And drawing dead just means, say a guy has pocket aces and I have 4 or 5 offsuit, and somehow I got into a pot with him, and he flops ace, ace nine. He has quad aces. No two cards that save, even if it comes running 5-5. He has quad aces. I have trip fives. Or if it comes 4-5, he has quad aces. I have two pair of 4-5. So drawing dead just means there's no way you can possibly win the hand, whether you know it or not, whether you're still in the hand or whether it's all in, and he flops quad aces versus your pocket kings or whatever. Drawing dead just means you have no chance to win the pot. You're at 0% chance, 0% probability. Okay, next term. I just described equity to you. It's your percentage of making your hand, the percentage of chance of making your hand that you have in the pot. A float is a common term to be called. It kind of goes along with c-bet. If same situation I had earlier, I lead out for 60 into like an $80 pot. I almost bet the pot, bet 3/4 the pot, and the guy has nothing. He has ace queen. I have ace king. Little I don't know on a 9-10-4 flop that I have the best hand with ace king, but I do because our aces are tied and my king is a better kicker. If I call that and then he just calls that bet kind of on the flop with no hand, no made hand yet, he's probably planning to float most of the time. If it's a rainbow flop, he's not looking for a flush. He's not looking for a straight. Like I said, 9-10-4. Rainbow. I should get to that term because that's in my thing. A rainbow flop just means club, diamond, spade. No two cards are the same suit, so the flush is almost out of the question most of the time. You can assume, obviously, except for a backdoor flush, which was another term. So spade, spade came. That'd be a backdoor flush. If I had two spades, I'd made my hand. But no, very rarely do people bet on that unless you give them like a free turn card, and then they see they're one away from a flush. They might call a small bet after the turn. So yeah, back to float. His plan, a float, is just you call the initial bet after the flop in hopes that for something which a hand I did, I would probably check unless, I think this guy, unless I get a read off him thinking he is floating me or he doesn't have much of a hand, or I want to try and bluff at it again a second time after the turn. But if he calls a decent sized bet on the flop, it's not unreasonable to check. That's when he would try and take the pot lead, and he would bet out, 100, even though he doesn't have a hand. His plan from the beginning was to float the flop bet and then try and bluff you on the turn. Or maybe he even floats 2 bets. He calls the turn, then I see, oh, he called me twice. There's no way. I'm not going to fire a third barrel. A barrel just means a third bluff, a third bet after the river card comes down because I think he might have a strong hand. That's when he can try and take the pot away from me. So you guys always can't play. Part of poker is you can't always just play your cards. You have to play poker. That's a advanced poker play. It's a big risk. I could be betting with an actual hand, but if you get a read off me and you're trying to float me, you can steal all those chips just because I'm c-betting you, and you're able to tell that I'm c-betting, or you're just trying to bluff me off a decent hand by floating and then raising on the turn or river, and to try and say to me that your hand's strong and get me to fold. So a float is just calling the flop or the turn with hopes of raising or betting out a strong amount on the turn or river to get you to fold or to take the pot as a bluff. Okay, next term. Again, guys, I don't want to make this video too boring. If you know these terms, if you started to realize you know 5 of these 6 first terms or 7 that I've said, you can maybe just skip this video. I got about 25 left. I'm trying not to make it too long, but I want to give you a good, full and detailed description of the word, just so you guys understand it. Gut shot's very simple. Gut shot just means you have an inside straight draw as a synonym for it. If I have 4-5 in my hand and there's 7-8 on the board, it means only one card makes my straight. An inside straight draw, and that's a 6, a gut shot. So there's 4 cards in the deck that can save me. It just means I'm one card away from a straight, and it's somewhere in the middle of my range. So 4 and 8 are my top cards. I need in the 7, 6, or 5. Next card, heads up, very simple, just means one-on-one. Like if there's 9 players at the table, I raise, everybody folds, only one person calls, one-on-one, heads up. It's a heads-up pot. Or if you're just playing one-on-one from the beginning, if you're the last 2 players in the tournament, it's a heads-up pot, heads-up tournament. Your whole cards are, a lot of people just think it's a weird word, but and I do too. It's just your 2 pocket cards. So like this would be 6-10, 6 of spades, 10 of hearts. It's just your 2 cards that you have that nobody else can see. The board is called the community board, or everybody's cards, so the 5 cards. So just your whole cards are your 2 holdings in Texas Hold'em that nobody knows. A limp is a term a lot of people might not know. If the blind is, say, 5, 10, blinds are 10s, this is the blinds are 5, sorry. A limp would just be everybody's, blinds are 10, I'm sorry. So small blind, big blind. Then a limp would be if I just called the 10 without raising. It's called a limp. And then if this guy called, he's limping as well. Limping, it can be like there's a trapping, which I'll explain right now because I kind of needed to do this. You could have like pocket aces, and if you're like first to act, you could just limp and disguise the strength of your hand. If you raise right away, everyone might think, okay, he's got 5 people to act behind him. He probably has a pretty strong hand. Um, but it could be to trap like that if I limp with pocket aces, thinking somebody else with a decent hand like ace queen or king queen suited will re-raise the pot. That's my hope. With pocket aces, you don't want to be going against 7 or 8 players. You want to try and get it to heads up, or at most go against 2 players. Because if you're against 8 other players, it's hard to come on top after the flop with only a pair of aces, if that's all there is. So a limp is just calling the blind without raising. Generally, it shows weakness, but sometimes it can be a trap, so you can never assume that. It's just putting in the blind amount without raising. And again, I just described trap to you. It's kind of the same thing as slow play. It's like slow playing a hand. If I have pocket aces, I just call on the flop, and only one person in the hand with me, and the flop comes king 10 9, and that the guy has like king queen. I'm in good. Well, yeah, king queen. He has a gut shot and he needs a king. He might think his top pair and gut shot's good, but I slow played and trapped with my pocket aces, and I have an overpair to the board, and I'll win that hand most of the time. All right, next term. Nuts just means you have the best possible hand at the time. Say you have 7 8 in your hand, and the flop comes 4 5 6. Rainbow flop. There's no chance for a flush yet. Nuts just mean you have the best possible hand at that time. Straight is the best possible hand. There's no hand that can beat you right now. Even if one guy has pocket 5s and he has a set of 5s, now he has 3 of a kind, which is not as good as a straight. The nuts are not a permanent thing. That's where the difference between the next term, stone cold nuts, means you can never be beat. So usually it takes to at least a turn to have the stone cold nuts. Depends what you have. If you have pocket 10s and the flop comes 10 10 9, you have the stone cold nuts on the flop. The stone cold nuts just mean there's a 0% chance you can be beat by any hand. No hand could outdraw you at any time on the board. I guess. Well, technically, sorry. I mean, if a guy had pocket aces and say the flop was 10 10 9, you technically don't have the stone cold nuts because he could turn and river ace ace, which would give him quad aces over your quad 10s. But so just to make it simpler, like I said, generally you can't assume on the flop, and unless you either flop like a royal flush or a straight flush, you can never assume that you'll have the stone cold nuts on the flop. Usually takes till the turn or river, but like it's usually a turn after the river. If there's no pairs on the board, like it's 2 7 8. King queen, and there's 3 spades, and you have the ace of spades and the 3 of spades. You have the stone cold nut flush because no flush is higher. There's no better hand. The board's not paired, so nobody can have a full house or quads. There's no straight flush. There's no royal flush. You have the stone cold nuts with an ace high flush. So it just means there's 0% chance a hand could beat you. Nuts just mean at the time after the flop, there's 0% chance that could be. If I had 7 8, like I said, and the flop was 4 5 6, if a 7 came on the turn, it would slightly counterfeit my straight. I would still have an 8 high straight, but now somebody who had 8 9 would now have the stone cold nuts because they would have a 9 high straight. So the term nuts just mean you can lose. Still can lose that hand, but you're still a heavy favorite at that time. You flop the best possible hand, or you turn the best possible hand at that time, but it can change by the end of the hand. Stone cold nuts just mean it can't, so you can probably turn or river the stone cold nuts. Next card, overcard, is very simple. Just saying flops 9 8 4, and my hand was, where's that ace? Ace jack. Flop 9 8 4. I have 2 overcards to the board. Both my cards are over the highest card there. So ace jack would be 2 overcards. This is a very simple term. It just means you have a higher card than what the board is. Over pairs, the same thing. Not same thing, but you can imagine what it is. If I had ace ace, pretend there's an ace of spades here. Ace ace means I have an overpair to the board. So there's no pair that could be higher. If somebody had a pair of 9s, I have a pair of aces. I have an overpair to what's available on the board, which is a very good trapping hand. Like if this was a flop for pocket aces, you could get a lot of money off somebody who has 9 10 or ace 9 or king 9. They think they have top pair with a very good kicker. Meanwhile, they're sitting here with pocket aces, the best hand in the game.